Hello. I have what I hope. Hey, Ross Lynch. I have what I hope will be an interesting live for y'all. If I can find it. I don't know if I have enough animals, but I went through and I gathered several up that represent. Hey, PJ, don't call me by my last name, please. Not on here. Okay? You can call me Charlie. That's okay. Just not on here. It's okay. It's cool, but yeah, there's people on here that I don't know. Then I don't want them to know my last name. Okay? Not a problem. Today we are talking about invasive species from North America, but we're going to give it a couple of seconds or another couple of minutes for people to come in, and then we'll get started. Thank you, PJ. You're amazing. How's everybody's day going? I know I asked that in the earlier. Oh, you are more than welcome. Tonight we are discussing invasive species from North America. So they are from either Canada, Mexico, or the United States, but they are found literally in places where they shouldn't be. And that's the focus of live tonight. Should be interesting. I hope it's interesting. But again, we're going to give it just a few minutes to see if people make it in. I hope you guys are. I'm going to move that light. It made me things. Gosh darn it. Technology. That's a little bit better. I hope everybody's doing okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started, I think. Hello, whoever just came in. I still don't see you, but hello. We're going to go ahead and get started. And some of the stuff was news to me. I did not know it, so I'm thinking if I didn't know it, it'll be news to you as well. Wow, 18 people. Hi, Daniela. Or is it Daniela Dabs? I'm not sure which. Hello. Germany. Funny thing, has a raccoon problem, as well as other countries. Just saying. But they do. They have. Hi, Tina. One's okay. Hi, B. Hi, Tina 177DD. Germany has a raccoon problem. And they have at least 1 million raccoons or more in their country. So, funny story, not so funny story. During World War II, Germany was raising raccoons for the fur trade. But they got bombed a lot during World War II. that bombing released the raccoons, but it did not kill the raccoons. And pretty soon, raccoons were breeding in a new land they had never been in, and pretty soon they had a bunch of raccoons. B, what part are you questioning? You said what, but I don't know what you're referring to. So let me know and I will clarify. Apparently, there were enough raccoons that weren't killed. And they were able to move away from the trouble spots, I'm guessing. But anyway, they are also now in Madrid, in Spain, they're in Italy, they're in France, they're in Russia, they're in Belarus, they're in Japan. Now, Japan's story is different from Germany's story. In Japan, there was a comic book or a TV show about a raccoon, and that made raccoons really popular. Sort of like owls did when Harry Potter came out. Yeah. And so a bunch of raccoons were brought to Japan to be pets. But people decided they didn't like raccoons as pets, and they set them free. And now Japan has a raccoon problem. But raccoons are also in the UK. They're in Austria, Belgium, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Hungary, Ireland, Luxembourg, Romania, Slovakia, and Spain. They are not, or they were not considered invasive in the UK, though. So that's a story for another time. Believe it or not, people have taken fish from the United States and put them in places they don't belong. Boy, that comes out sounding really gross. But largemouth bass, for the most part, was exported from the United States in the hopes of having a new game fish, a new fish to fish. And they can be found in Southern Africa, Europe, Japan, China, South America, and Central American countries as well. In fact, in Venezuela, they're connected with the extinction of a grebe, which is a bird that dives into the water, sort of like a duck. Yeah. Anyway, in Japan, it is an invasive species. It was introduced in 1925 in a lake called Ashi, Ashi, and they were introduced for sports fishing and for development as a potential food source. Bye. Okay, are you leaving? That's okay. But apparently they were sort of released. Okay, that's cool. You're welcome to stay. For development as a potential food source, that clearly did not take off. And the fish has been released into other lakes illegally, thus allowing the fish to spread. Red-eared sliders. Now this is a story I'm not sure what to make of. But they are in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Great Britain, South Africa, the Caribbean, the Middle East, Southeast Asia. And they were probably brought in for pets. That's what I'm thinking. But In South Wales, which is a state in Australia, they have 2 breeding populations, and that is just in the state of New Zealand, or in the state of New South Wales in Australia. And a lot of them were smuggled in and then illegally released, which really makes no sense to me, but that's the story, and that's what I'm sticking with. American bullfrogs. This species can be found in 40 different countries. The red-eared slider, it's a turtle. American bullfrogs can be found in 40 different countries, including China, South Korea, Japan, Western United States, and Mexico. And in some places, this frog was brought in as a food source to help control other animals. Hey, D-Man. They were also brought in for other reasons. They escaped from breeding facilities and possibly as escaped pets. But there is a very serious problem with this. Bullfrogs are host to a very deadly fungus that affects amphibians. And they can spread this fungus. But anyway, I need to get back to some history. So in 1853, for whatever reason, Commodore Perry had some ships. And they arrived in Japan with some bullfrogs. The Japanese were thinking, oh, these guys are going to catch on as a food source, but they never did. And now Japan has a problem because now they have bullfrogs. Prickly pear. I'm probably not going to do cane toads, only because cane toads come from South America and not North America. We're just talking about a handful of animals from North America that frog legs. Lots of people eat frog legs. Prickly pear was a problem in Australia. It's a problem in Ethiopia, South Africa, the Middle East, India, and Sri Lanka, where it arrived in 1865 from Japan. Yeah. It had already been introduced into Japan, or from India, and was brought to Sri Lanka, where it really quickly took off along the coast. Yes, prickly pear is a cactus. And it was brought into Australia in 1903, where it just became a really major problem until they introduced some pests that ate the prickly pear cactus. Any questions so far? And if you know anything about prickly pear cactus, you know that it has thorns, but it also produces a fruit. And if you have birds who are eating that fruit, they can help spread the cactus by eating the fruit. So not a good thing at all. Moving on. Canadian goldenrod. And I know what you're thinking. How is Canadian goldenrod a invasive? Well, it is, and I'm going to get to that. They were introduced into Europe during the 17th century, so the 1600s, right? I believe so. But as we've seen in many cases within the United States, anytime that you bring a plant in for ornamental reasons, you have to make sure that it's not going to grow in that new environment. Because that is exactly what happened. The plant escaped captivity, and it now can be found in Nordic countries, as well as it is in Great Britain, Australia, parts of New Zealand, and Central Europe, where it is competing with native plants, because in some places they do have native goldenrod. And what you don't want to happen, you don't want plant A to cross with plant B, because that would then create a new species, and you don't want that. That's dangerous. I have technically two more plants that we're gonna, actually more than that. And then we're gonna hop, skip, and jump and do some more. Yeah, but it's not the way it's supposed to happen. Technically, it's not evolution. Technically, it's crossbreeding. And it wouldn't have happened if man hadn't interfered. So it's not supposed to be this way. Red oak is considered an invasive, and it is the most invasive tree in Central Europe. It arrived at the end of the 17th century. It is two different plants. You can cross between species or between genus. So, like, I can take a black oak and cross it with a red oak, or a white oak to a red oak, and get a totally different species. Doesn't really happen that much, I don't think, in the United States, but we're seeing it happen in, where if the plant hadn't been in Europe to begin with, it would not cross. So, like, for example, okay, I can take a German Shepherd, okay, and I can breed it with a collie. Or technically, I could take a wolf and breed it to a German Shepherd, or a coyote with a German Shepherd, and get a totally different animal. Technically, no. Because species, so let's do this. Okay. We have, I'm going to get rid of this because it's getting in my way. We have a polar bear and we have a grizzly bear. Polar bear, grizzly bear. Same. Let me make sure I got this right because I don't want to mess up. Okay. So we have a polar bear, and we have a polar bear and a grizzly bear. Two different species, same genus. Ursus is the genus, but they are two different species. Okay? Are you following me so far? Let me know. Let me know. Okay. But I can take a grizzly bear and I can take a polar bear and I can breed them. That makes a new animal. It's a cross between a polar bear and a grizzly bear. I can also take I can also take a lion and a tiger and breed them together. Because they're both within the same genus, even though they're different species. Yeah, as long as they're within that same genus, you can breed them together. The result, technically, is something new. Right, exactly. Now, the problem becomes when, let's do it this way. Hold on. No, they're not the same flower. I really need to keep tissues up here. You guys are not going to be able to see this. The same, carry me through. It's the same difference between a grizzly bear and a polar bear. Same idea. It's two different species within that group. No. That's their genus. So their genus, it's the same thing with the lion and the tiger, or the grizzly bear and the polar bear. Same exact stuff. So their genus name is SOL SOLIDAGO. Okay, there is Canadian goldenrod in Europe because it was introduced there during this the 16th century or so. The problem is you have sorry guys, I'm looking something up. Because I am not going to remember it later. You have plant A, which is our SOLIDAGO, CANADENIS. That whatever that is, canadensis, that is our Canadian goldenrod. And then that is introduced into Europe. Europe has the plant B, which is SOLIDAGO. Hopefully I spelled it right both times. VIRGAUREA. So those are they are two different species. Google says they can what? So you have plant A and plant B. They are two different species. The problem is they're interbreeding, which they can do. But the resulting plants are not pure Canadian goldenrod, and they're not a European goldenrod. They're a new type. Just like if you take the tiger and the lion and you breed them together, you get a new animal. It's not a pure lion and it's not a pure tiger. So you're messing up the genetics. And that's the problem. No, they can. What you can't do is I can't take a cheetah and I can't go outside the genus. So for instance, let's see. Yeah, exactly. So I have a crocodile. I have a crocodile and a oh no, I bought these from a online store, PJ. So this is a crocodile and this is an alligator. They are both crocodilians. D-Man, are you still with me? Now, computer FIS. Hi, Oliver Rats. Outside of a genus, the animals cannot breed. So the example of humans and Neanderthal, that works because we are both within the genus Homo. That's okay. It's okay. Because if you don't understand what's going on, you're not going to understand it. And that's not good either. So basically what ends up happening is these plants are out competing. Yeah, exactly. So what happens is they not only do they outcompete with each other, but they're also messing up the genetics of this other plant. So you're not getting, you might get seeds that are not a European goldenrod. At the same time, we have red oak, which is from the United States, and it's considered to be the most invasive tree in Central Europe. It arrived sometime around the end of the 17th century, and it may have been introduced as early as 1691. And at first, just like the goldenrod, it was brought in as an ornamental, as a potential shade tree. But again, it jumped captivity. And again, we have an issue where plant A is meeting plant B, and this is going to be backwards, maybe. We have plant A meeting plant B, creating plant C. Hybrids of each other. And again, that is not good. At the same time, we have yet another species of tree from the United States that is popping up in Australia. And believe it or not, it's honey locust. If you don't know what honey locust is, it's a very beautiful tree, has really beautiful sweet smelling flowers, but it has a habit of growing spines. I'm not going to call them thorns. They are spines. And they were introduced to provide food for cattle. So you would chop up the leaves and give them to it. You might give them the bean pods, whatever. They're not bean pods. They're not really beans. They're a seed pod. It was also introduced as a shade or ornamental tree, but in Australia, it outcompetes native plants, reduces habitat for native animals, and those spines, they can injure people, they can injure animals, and they can puncture tires. Yes, I said puncture tires. Another plant that I didn't know was outside of our country is common milkweed. And it was introduced into Europe in or around 1629. I kid you not. Where it was grown as a source of fiber, potential for latex production, and for beekeeping. And it reached the Ukraine in the mid-19th century, where it is now a problem. So, America, with all of our invasive species, not through necessarily our actions, but the actions of others, well, unfortunately, we have the plants. We can grow seeds. The problem, yeah, we have lost plants, but like with so many other things, if the habitat is not there, if the conditions are not right, even if you bring the plants back, it doesn't fix the problems. And so we need to look at why a species is not doing well. We need to look at why that species is not doing well, and then we need to fix the problem. And until the problem is fixed, you may not be able to get it back. Up north, we have a plant called Phragmites. And places that had cattails when I was a kid, up through my 20s, no longer have cattails. And I'm not saying that there aren't still cattails. But invasive species have effects that don't impact us directly, but they can push out other organisms. Kudzu is a problem But kudzu is not what's behind milkweed not being around. That would be basically one or two things. Pollinators not being around, and pesticides, herbicides being used too much, development, and lots of development. The area where I know PJ, if he's still in here, awesome Jurassic. Invasive species, it's not just an American problem, it's a global problem. We think we're going to solve an issue by bringing in something. Rather it's kudzu for erosion control, or Phragmites for ornamental purposes, or Oriental bittersweet for ornamental properties. You have to look at, is this animal or plant capable of surviving? And if it does have a potential to thrive, then don't bring it in. Because all of these things that escaped are able to survive. And that is what we need to really, really focus on. D-Man probably interacts with... Right. And there's also, and the kicker is, there's an invasive cattail. Lots of invasives. Black cherry is another example. Oh, no. Exactly. Black cherry is another example of a species that is gone. And that's the point. We need genetic diversity, but we don't need it to come from an exotic plant. We need it to come from the natives. The natives are adapted for that environment, and if you bring something in that doesn't belong there, it causes problems. You can't bring in something that's... I'm trying to think of an example. But again, when I was a kid, great example. When I was a kid, the lake by my house had cattails. The Phragmites, which is a reed, R-E-E-D, there wasn't that much of it. It was there, but it was manageable. Now it's not. And the kicker is, the animals don't really use the Phragmites, but they would use the cattail. plants that have berries. If it's food and the birds can eat it, they're going to eat it, and they're going to defecate seeds all over the place. Florida, at this point, I don't know if there is a way to unestablish some of the invasives that they have. That's the problem. You either wait for a disease to come through, or you see, and here's the other problem. You could potentially burn it, right? You could potentially cure the problem by fire. But Phragmites is a grass, which means that there's an underground rhizome. And if you don't kill that rhizome, it doesn't matter what you do up top. If you did the fire early, it might. The problem is some plants will even keep their seeds. Their seeds can live for years. So I don't know. They do get tall. Phragmites, I'm not certain which Phragmites we have. This is Utah, and that is Phragmites. That is what I see. It basically takes over. And it's pretty dense. And this gives you an idea of how tall it gets. That's in the Great Lakes area. So a couple of things. There is the invasive plant is called Phragmites australis. I don't believe it came from Australia. I believe it came from Europe. And I think there is a native variety and there is a non-native variety. I don't agree with this. I believe there is an invasive, and I believe there is it seems to me that one variety came from Europe and there's another variety that is American. So common reed comes from Europe. And it may have come in as an ornamental. The sort of good news is that it's edible. We could eat this. Of course, the problem is if it's growing in polluted water, you don't want to eat it. But that is a possibility. So it basically makes, and D-Man has talked about this, it basically makes a monoculture. It'll come in, it'll get naturalized in an area, and it just pushes everything out. And it becomes naturalized, which means that it is growing without human help. And that's what it's about. It's about moderation. Anyway, I hope you guys learned something from today's live. We are winding down. Yeah, I hear you. Interesting. The things I learned. Saturday's live. Whilst I'm thinking about it. Ow. Anything that tastes like soap is out the door for me. We are, I believe, going to be talking about floods and their benefit to an ecosystem. And why they're an important part of an ecosystem. So that will definitely be tomorrow at 1. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to do the volcano one, but we might. We might. Otherwise, I'll switch it out for something. So at this point, this is what next week looks like. Trivia on the 18th. At least once. I don't know if I'm going to do the second half. We have a herbal tea and chat subscriber only activity on the 21st. The 22nd is going to be wait, what did Ross L fans say that? They don't? That's weird. They must, surely. The 22nd, we are doing a 12-hour or 9 hour live, 12-hour live, something like that. On the 22nd. So that is next week. What was I thinking? Aye. But anyway, that is coming up. Also coming up next week. Well, I know why I do. Because it impacts the taste of the food sometimes. And I can taste it on the plastic. Perhaps, perhaps. Somebody posted a picture of material that their dog brought back to them. They're in South Carolina. And it looks like osteoderms. Demon, can you see that? Osteoderms? That's what I thought. That is at St. Helena Island in South Carolina. I guess I didn't realize the Carolinas had alligators, let alone crocodiles. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Anyway, guys, it is that time of night. I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks for coming in. Love y'all. Take care, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Talk to you later, guys.